Hey, Susan.
Hi, Dave. It's good. I need this right away.
Yeah, my wife says I need it too instead of the Coke I've been having every week. I love that song.
So do I.
Psalm 121,
Yeah.
look into the mountains. But it's not the mountains, it's beyond, right? To the Lord and how he helps us in times of trouble.
Yeah. The first, and then I was thinking when you were singing that song, this is the first Bible I ever bought Roger, my first husband.
Yep.
That's the inscription I put into his Bible, Psalm
Yep.
121.
Yeah, it's precious.
Mm-hmm.
So, I know you like gardening, but what's with these?
Oh, yes. Why? What makes you think I like gardening?
Because I was at your place and had fresh cilantro from your
go.
garden.
Yeah. This geranium is really special
Yep.
because it comes from my mom.
Okay.
So my mom and dad, when they retired from their greenhouse like 41 years ago,
Yep.
were given some plants by one of their friends that was another supplier or whatever. And she really liked this geranium. So she kept it from year over year, bringing a plant in and propagating it and then putting out more plants. So I have some plants around my house that I name, and so this is Ruth, after my mom.
After your mom.
So yeah, this week marked 4 months since she's gone on to
Yep.
be into glory with
Yep.
Dad and Jesus. So
Yep.
yeah, so
It's pretty precious.
it's beautiful. It's perfect. Yeah.
And don't you take some of those cuttings and share them?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
So when I take cuttings in March, I always take more than what I want because I
Yep.
only have a couple. And then I just give them away. I just put up there,
Yeah.
hey, anybody want? And so it's fun because it's interesting over the years that I've been doing that, is that people will send me a picture. Look how well Ruth is doing, or
Yep.
look how whatever. And that just touches my heart.
Yeah.
So it just...
I think it's really good. I've been meaning to talk to you a little bit about how people process death, because I think in our society it's really broken. We have such incorrect ways of thinking about how
Yeah.
we grieve and whether we grieve,
Yeah.
how long it should take, what it takes to do so. And this is a great way of illustrating having someone continue to live with us after they've gone, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Which
And
br-
the rose, yeah?
Yeah, which brings me to this.
Mm.
So on this one, you'll see there's a name
Yeah. Yeah. And a big mustache.
and a big mustache.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it says Roger, and there's a big mustache on it, and it has his birth date, and it also has the date that he went home.
Yep.
So the story behind this is that at his viewing
Yep.
at the funeral home with family, when we had viewing, my brother-in-law, so Dennis,
Yep.
showed up with this. So Dennis is a very gifted guy, as
Yep.
in he can make all kinds of things. Not only he loves restoring cars, but he also makes things really neat. So he actually
Okay.
made this. This is like
Oh,
welded.
that's cool. Yeah.
And why there's a red rose on here is because that is the flower that Roger always bought.
Okay.
So besides the big significant times that you buy, like Valentine's and
Yep.
so on, he randomly would just buy them for me. And
That's,
in fact, the day of at his funeral,
Yep.
then I gave back to him. I had 36 roses sit in the front for every year that we were married.
Precious.
So it's really special, and I keep this beside my bed.
Yeah.
Just as a reminder of
Yep.
him, and it's such a special gift. to
That
me.
is precious from Dennis and meaningful, right?
Yes.
And it's one of those things where we talk about the need to keep people alive in our life, and then everything that we do or teach people about grieving stops that from happening.
Yeah.
Oh, you've had a week of bereavement leave? You should be over it. Get back to work and everything's fine, right? Or it's been 2 or 3 months. How come you're not over it, right?
Yeah.
You have a new husband. How come you're not over it?
Yeah.
And just trying to understand the need to not only grieve properly, because you have to go through it, right?
Yes.
There's not around
No.
or over,
Yeah.
stop. Yeah, like you have to go through it.
Yeah.
And yet, so often we don't, right?
And I think grieving is only something you're ever going to fully understand once you go through it yourself.
Definitely.
And there's depths of what I've learned in all of this too, is there's depths of grief as well too. So my mom
100%.
passed. Was I sad? Of course I was sad, because she, culminated, she was so good and just so and my dad too, but they lived 100 years.
Yes.
They were looking forward to going home
Yep.
to be with Jesus. So it's sad, but it's also a time of rejoicing.
Yep.
Whereas, my husband was only 57 years old.
Yeah.
Some people, and they say the hardest grieving is for your spouse, which
Yep.
makes sense. Look at the intimacy and everything that
100%.
goes into a relationship, as well as losing a child.
Yes.
Those are the most significant things about grieving, and
Yep.
those are the two hardest things. But grief isn't just time spans. Grief
No.
is a journey. So
Definitely.
I'll be grieving my whole life, even though my life has moved on. I have a wonderful husband now, but grieving does not end. It is a life journey.
Well, and part of what we see in that, so the scriptures at the end of the book, right, in Revelation 21, it says that he will wipe away every tear, there will be no more death, sadness is gone, right? And it's like, that's glorious, but it's in the future. And sometimes we kind of teach it like, well, he wipes away every tear, he's there to be your comfort, therefore stop being sad.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work like that,
No,
right?
it doesn't.
And I think it's important for us to realize that, because sometimes when we come alongside people and we try to empathize with them,
Yeah.
we're unsure of what to say, and so we speak when we don't need to,
No.
and we say foolish things we think mean something,
Yeah.
and try to connect, but it really doesn't. I know people who are like, I sympathize with you with the loss of your husband. We had to put our dog down, and I know what it's like. And it's like, that's not the same.
No.
Like, you're not even in the ballpark, right? And it comes from a good place. The heart is trying to connect.
Yes.
But you need to be wiser about that.
Yeah.
And really giving people the understanding of saying, it's a process that you will always be going through in your life.
And it's not one size fits all.
100%.
So it's a journey. It's specific to you.
Yes.
There'll be moving forward, going back, moving forward, going back.
Yep.
But you have to fully embrace it, like we
Yep.
just said. You can't go around it. You can't go underneath it or whatever.
Yes.
You actually have to go through it.
Yeah.
And
people come alongside to partner with you in that. They can support you, but there's many parts of it that you just have to walk alone. And your situation, you have a pretty special husband who allows you, you don't need permission, but gives you permission to continue to speak about Roger.
Yes.
Right? A lot of husbands would be threatened by a rose
Yeah.
on the bedside,
Yeah.
and he's not,
No.
because he understands that.
Yeah.
And when you go through it yourself, you understand what the
Exactly.
process looks like and
Yeah.
what it needs to be, right?
Yeah.
And you can continue to honor Roger. And I think you told me that your kids have pictures for Christmas that they've drawn about Roger in the storybook.
yeah,
That's something that's the first time I've heard about that with people, but it's a brilliant idea. Idea.
So Roger's first grandchild was born on his birthday.
Yeah.
That again is God in itself,
And he-
giving that gift back, restoring, ashes from ashes to joy, right?
Yep.
So in order for our grandchildren not know him, my daughter helped me, and we made a book of his life, as in from a child to the jobs he had to a picture book.
Yeah.
So a picture book for children called Grandpa Roger.
Yep.
So the boys got that now. In the last year, I've got 2 granddaughters. So the girls, whoops, if they're watching, they are watching, are going to get that shortly as well too. And it's a way for them to connect, to realize this is where daddy or mummy's, father came from.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And they have never met him,
Yeah.
so they don't
No.
know him, but they have characteristics that come from his
Oh,
genes, right?
yeah, absolutely.
And spit and image and all
Yeah.
that, some of the characteristics,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
I know that's something that we've done in our family too, because Tara Lee's mom passed when she was very young, and so she was 9 years old when her mom passed, and so explaining to our family, our kids, what that would have been like. Oh, grandmother would have loved to experience this with you. She would have done these things with you.
Yeah.
And just keeping that memory, introducing them to
Yeah.
the special person that was, right?
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
a lot of people in our society don't allow people to do that, because it's like, it's uncomfortable for me, so I don't want you to talk about it.
Right.
But you need to say their name, right?
Yeah.
You need to express, and
Exactly.
keeps them alive that way.
Absolutely.
Because it doesn't remind you that they died.
Right.
Right?
It reminds you that they lived.
Exactly.
So, for example, one thing that, people will tell me different stories over time or something
Yeah.
that reminds them. But I remember even Melvin telling me at church, it's like, oh, my roads have never been cleaned properly again or
The
haven't
same
been
since,
maintained
yep.
well since Roger did that. That makes my heart sore.
Right.
Because saying his name and saying experiences and knowing who he was keeps him alive. And it makes me feel, special that he's still here and that he's not been forgotten as well either.
That they've not been forgotten.
Yeah.
Because you remember that they're gone. Like
Yeah.
you know more than anyone else that
Yeah.
they're gone, but that someone else remembered them.
Exactly.
I was talking with Art Friesen a few months ago, and he was talking about coming to coffee, and Dave and Art used to come really early, and so they had their seats at coffee. And so the end one was always Dave's, and Art would sit beside him. And a few weeks after Dave passed, went home to glory, Art said to me, I just can't sit there. Like, that's Dave's chair, right? And so when I told that to Doreen, it was like a big smile. Like sad, because he's
Yes.
gone, and you remember,
Right.
but someone remembered him.
Absolutely.
Right?
Still
And it's
honoring their
precious.
friendship, still
Yeah.
honoring that space, right?
And
that
it's not like
space.
no one can sit in that chair
No.
ever again, but it's
Yeah.
like there's a space there for
Exactly.
the memory,
Yeah.
and then that helps in the
Yeah.
healing,
The
right?
thing is, yes, you mourn the person, but you mourn more than that because they're not here
Yeah.
for today, like
Yeah.
experiencing what we're doing today.
Yeah.
They're not here for, grandchildren, life events, family gatherings, the list goes on and on. That's what you mourn, is these things we're continuing, our life is continuing, but they're not here with us for those things.
And there's a huge difference between grieving and mourning.
Yeah.
And part of what you mourn is the things that you don't get to experience, right? You know, your kids and grandkids and on, he's not going to be there for those big days, right? Tara Lee's mom's not there for when the kids are
Yeah.
born, when they graduate, when they get married, when
Yeah.
they have kids. And there's a little bit of your heart that's still in that should be honored, right?
And the thing is, like, grieving is internal, right?
Yep.
So it's something, that's why it's so hard, such hard work,
Yep.
and and it's heart work, and it's only for you to do. But once you get to the process where you're grieving and your mourning is the outward expression, like
Yes.
telling and whatever. So that's why even, meeting, so even Roger's family, so they lost like 3 significant family members,
Yep.
his mom, his dad, first his dad, his mom, and then his niece,
Yep.
and then Roger. So within a span of 18 months,
Wow.
like that's a hard process to even process one grief, never mind culminating all of those.
Yep.
So I tell them now, even when we, plan family gatherings and work through that,
Yep.
we still need to have those because
Yep.
for me and my kids, when we're together with Chartiers,
Yep.
that's when we feel that Roger's there.
Yep.
We see the mannerisms, the all, the
certainly,
discussion, the
right.
joking, all the camaraderie. There's just that thing, and it brings comfort, and then we'll talk about them too,
There's,
right?
exactly, and there's a comfort and there's a healthy part of that.
Yeah.
If you're always only talking about him and
Right.
nothing else,
Right.
no, that's not a healthy
Yeah.
thing. But if
Yeah.
you never talk about him,
No,
that's not healthy either,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
And so as you try to process, and like I said, death is no respecter of persons. So sometimes it comes for us really early and sometimes later.
Yes.
But it's also like, it's not like it gives you time to breathe before
No.
the next one sometimes.
Exactly.
And many times it's hard, you haven't finished grieving or mourning the first, and you're on to the second or third or fourth, and you're just overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And that's where you need people to come alongside and give you space. It's hard because we have this idea like it's on a clock,
Yeah.
right? Well, it's been this long, so you should be okay by now. We'd be okay, right? But you don't know what you'd be
No.
until you're there,
Yeah.
right? You think but you don't really know
No.
the emotion of it, the deep pain of it, the strong, difficult work of processing that,
Yeah.
and then getting to that place where you're, and even that, it's been years.
Yeah.
It'll be decades.
Yeah.
It doesn't just disappear,
No.
right?
And the thing is, when somebody is sick, like he was,
Yeah,
and you're journeying that,
yep,
you're already grieving. So when I think about my story of grief,
Yep.
I was already grieving, and I'm like, this is so weird. He's living, but I'm still grieving till I realized and understood and researched, okay, what I'm experiencing is called anticipatory grief.
Yep.
So I'm already anticipating that I'm going to retire without him.
Yeah.
I'm going to have grandchildren without him.
Yeah.
I am going to, the list goes on and on. So you're already, that it's a
Yep.
real thing.
Yep.
So then when people judge and or look at you and think, oh, why are you doing so well so
Yep.
soon after sometimes, or what seems to be so well,
Yep.
it's like, okay, I've been going through this journey
Yep.
for all these years before he even passed away.
And it's hard because it's not like you're waiting for that time
No,
and then, right?
no.
But you know with certainty that that's coming if it's terminal, and then you're starting to process those things, or at least you
Yes.
should be, right?
Yeah.
And then the guilt comes, right? Because, oh, he's actually not passed yet, but how do I, but then I'm preparing, but then I
Yeah.
feel terrible about it, right?
Yeah.
And so that's one of those things where people, it's different for everyone, right?
Yeah.
And some people, they look on the outside like they're doing great, but inside they're a mess. And other people who look on the outside that they're a mess, but they've been processing and really dealing with it, and they're in a better place in the long
Exactly.
run, right?
Never mind those that lose somebody like suddenly.
Oh, yeah.
Like
Yeah.
accidents, right? Whatever, just suddenly. That, it's like, what a shock. That's totally different than what
Yeah.
I experienced. But
Yeah.
still, it's like a game. All of it is a game changer, a life changer.
Yeah.
But it just stops you right there. And even your grieving, that's where people can, and who I've talked to since, even with my journey and stuff, is
Yeah.
where we can get stuck at times
Yeah.
in our grief because it's so traumatic that it paralyzes you.
Yes. And so those are the times where you need someone to come alongside and support you. And sometimes that support is just being there,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's not like there's a silver bullet answer of like, if you say this great saying, then the person's magically going to be healed and everything's going to be perfect
Yeah.
again. But the fact that you're there, right, means so much when people are going through hurt. And the other thing is do something tangible.
Yeah.
Like vacuum the house, bring a
Yeah.
meal. Don't just offer help.
That's right.
Do something.
I was
right?
going to say, the littlest thing, for me, the littlest things is when people just showed up to say, okay, I'm going to do. Yeah, don't offer, okay, if you ever need something,
Yeah.
call me. That never, you need to tangibly either, show up there with food or tangibly rake somebody's yard or
Yep.
it's housing or just offer to take them out. And I
Change the oil, make a meal,
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
something where it's tangible, right? Because the offer is great,
Yeah.
but how many times do we take a
Yeah.
person on the offer?
I was telling you when we were talking about this topic too, is like how I missed having male company within our
Yeah.
friend group.
Yep.
So even having a couple,
Yep.
guy, gal, friends,
Yep.
take me as a widow out to a concert, something they knew Roger would have loved.
100%.
That just made my heart sore because it's just good to have that conversation with
Well, obviously-
male conversation because you do miss that.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is just, again, he's just like he's here because he's amongst
Yeah.
the community that we were used to being in.
Well, and the world is built in pairs,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so it's hard for people who are single, whatever reason that they've in the situation that they're single.
Yeah.
And so having someone offer you to be in that space is meaningful, right? It's powerful.
Yeah.
And so obviously it has to be appropriate, and there has
Yeah.
to be no threat that you're trying to take someone's
Yeah.
spouse or something. But that male voice, that male touch in a platonic way,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that matters, and
Yeah.
and you miss that.
Yeah.
And so having a safe place where you can express that is really cathartic. It's really helpful in your healing, right? And yet, again, it's like, well, you should be over it by now. Like, how come you can't just be with your single people?
Yeah.
You have to be, because you feel like a third wheel to start with,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But as you're invited into that space, you can start to heal and be whole in that as
That
well.
too, and even physical touch.
Yeah.
Right? It's just
Yeah.
like, oh, I remember asking people, can you just give me a hug? I just need a hug today.
Yeah.
That was where work family was really good too, right?
Yes.
And it's just like they knew all of that too. But beyond that, it's just the little things that you just miss
Yeah.
about you're having a whole relationship and all of that
Yeah.
as well too. But not to say that. So then when you talk about even your faith journey into all of
Yeah.
that, yes, there was always the hope,
Yeah.
which is why
Yep.
I had, and I had made, the
Yep.
signage I had made to put on our bedroom wall because it's a line from a hymn, Great
Yep.
is Thy Faithfulness, and put on our bedroom wall so that when we went to bed at night, Roger and I, we would see that.
Yep.
Strength for today, bright hope for tomorrow.
Yeah.
And when we got up in the morning, what did
Yep.
we see again?
Yep.
So I personally needed physical reminders
Yep.
of God's faithfulness to me and the hope that
Yep.
things will get better,
Yep.
hope that, tomorrow is good. And even, you think about the Lord's Prayer. We all know the Lord's Prayer, but there's a line in there that really struck me when I was going through that. It was like, give us this day our daily bread. Okay, it's talking about eating there and provision, but it's just the day. When you really think about it and you look at that, it's like God's just asking us to look at the day. So our day culminated by, and then I started thinking, okay, if we could look for something to be thankful for in each day, even though each day was hard, or maybe it wasn't, or it was a good day or whatever, but it just transformed your mind to think of better things than taking you down. Because even when he first got his diagnosis, I'm like, I can't read my Bible. Like, I'm just like, why is this happening to us? Why, like, what did we do? Like, whatever. And then finally I started reading the Psalms, and a lot of that came out. That's all I could read, is because David was sort of all over the map. He could talk to God about anything. He was like...
Well, we like picking out the Psalms, Psalm 1, Psalm 100, Psalm 23, and they're all upbeat and positive. But there's so many that he wrote that were just like, what's going on? This isn't fair. That's not right. How come this is happening to me? And it amazes me that Christians have such bad theology when it comes to this, because the whole message of the gospel is based on the idea of death bringing life. And yet what we teach is that there's death and you just get over it, and then you just leave out all this healing and all this growing and all this life that comes from it, right? And it's hard because you have this idea like, oh, you're a Christian, but you have no struggles. There's no hard days. No, the chemo kicks your butt, right? You have days where you don't have hope, where you need to find a place where you trust in God, because it just doesn't come naturally, and that's natural. That's normal. You don't have to beat yourself up because that's what's happening. But we do that to each other, right?
All the time.
Well, you're on the board. How come you haven't got this and this and this level of faith? Doesn't mean you don't.
No.
It just means that the things that God promises us aren't always the things that we're asking for. We see them in that proper light, right?
So many times, so I was journaling, and I would journal things just to remind me, again, of just where God was all in all this. Or I was reading every kind of book on suffering and hardship and that. And when I was looking at that again today, was we're going to talk about today. So even in Psalm 71, it says, you allow me to suffer much hardship, but you will restore me to life again and lift me up from the depths of the earth. You will restore me to even greater honor and comfort me once again. And do not fear bad news. They confidently trust the Lord to care for them. The Lord helps the fallen and lifts those who bent beneath their loads. The eyes of all look to you in hope. And, so all of those, you realize where he was in his span. It's not, he was in a pit. Virtually, when you're grieving too, that's what you feel like. You're at the bottom of everything, and you question everything.
And that's okay.
And it's okay.
Like sometimes we think in our faith like you're not allowed to question because it shows a lack of faith. But actually it just shows process as you're trying to understand. Like I said, Jesus in Hebrews chapter 5, it talks about him praying to God who could save him from death, and his prayers are answered. And yet we know that he still died. So how could his prayers be answered as he's in the garden saying, not my will, but thy will be done. Take this cup from me. And yet he still has answered prayer, and and he gives his life, right? And so part of it is understanding what the purpose of our life is. God's purpose in our life isn't to keep us from death.
No.
The wages of sin is death, but God gives his gift of eternal life through his son Jesus. But that's the end result of the process.
Right.
And so if we just say, well, if God isn't answering our prayer by keeping us from death, or from healing us from cancer, or from fill in the blank, it's a wrong idea of what God's promises are. And that saps our faith. It saps our hope. It saps our joy. Because we're looking for things that he's not offering. And then we're blaming him for not delivering on things that we're requesting, but he's not giving, right?
So 10 years ago, because it'll be 10 years in December, when after a 19-month journey of living in different hospitals and being in different rehabilitation places, and he came home. And I remember the Open Door Church came to Carol at our place.
Yep.
And that night we were reading through the Psalms, and Psalm 139:16 said, "You saw me before I was born. Every day of my life was recorded in your book. Every moment was laid out before a single day had passed."
Yep.
And we talked about that, and we were like, okay, if we still believe God is good and he still has a plan for us, he goes, he knew this was going to happen to you
Yep.
all along.
Yeah.
Are we still going to trust him
Yep.
for the end result?
Yep.
Because it was like, hey, he didn't have a benefits at work.
Yep.
Financially, there are a lot of things we had to trust
Yep.
God for a provision and financially, and then I was still, thankfully I could still work, but
Yep.
all of these things we were grappling, and we're like, okay, that was a point where it was like an aha moment for us, is like, okay, he knew this was going to happen to you. So do we continue to trust and put our trust in you? And 2 Peter, it says, if you're suffering in a manner that pleases God, keep on doing that which is right, and trust your lives to God who created you, who will never fail you.
And he
And
doesn't
that was
fail
our
us, even though we
experience.
think he fails us,
Yeah.
because we don't like the result.
Yeah.
And it's not a results-based, right?
Right.
But his story, Roger's story, continues to touch people's lives, even after he's gone.
Yes.
Right? And so it is important that we understand that it's different for everybody,
Right.
right? That journey is different.
Yeah.
And it's not, like I say, results where it's like worth it because of the replacement, if you
Yeah.
want to use that word. People in the church, they're like, oh, Job and his story, and he had all this heartache and loss and death. And then at the end of the book, he has double the fortune and double the kids and double the, it's like, that doesn't make up for,
No.
it doesn't replace.
No.
You mentioned you have a new husband. It's not like a
Yes.
replacement
No.
for the old husband,
Yeah.
but there's an opportunity for you to walk into something new
Yes.
together if the healing happens.
Yes.
And you can give each other grace in that process, right?
And that's the mourning part of working
The
through all of that.
expression.
And even, like last year was the first time I actually gave my story, told
Yeah.
my story at a public event.
Yeah.
I meet with people that are going through much what had gone through, being a
Yeah.
widow and so on,
Yeah.
and try and touch base with them because I know the heart of
Yeah.
where they've come from, and I feel like that's where God's really led me to say, you can just show up. I know you don't have to have the words. I know that now. You can
Yeah.
just be there for them because they often need to let go. But it's like, okay, there's a purpose. Even in all of this, there's a purpose for everything.
Yeah.
And I believe our stories, all of us have a story,
Yeah.
are there to help people through exactly times like this, and then other things that people are going through. If we could only be vulnerable, I always say,
That's
as
the
a
trick.
church, as a community, as everything, and telling our stories,
Yep.
we would be so much more connected. And this is just a little part where I feel like, again, okay, now I'm retired. What, Ephesians 2:10 says about God created of all of us for a purpose. Well, what is my purpose now? That's what death does, is when you start to think, what's my purpose? Even after my mom's death now, I'm going, okay, now that generation of my family is gone. What's my purpose now? And like in our family as
Definitely.
well too, right?
Yeah.
So I think that happens every time something like that happens, is you examine yourself.
Well, and the irony is that your purpose hasn't changed.
No.
You're just finding out what it is.
Yeah.
Right? In a new and fresh way.
Right.
And it's ironic because Hebrews talks about the fact that we're all appointed to die.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's not like something we can
No.
escape. And yet we live like it's not going to happen to us. And we live like we can't talk about it because it's
Right.
so taboo. But it's life and death are intertwined, and it's such a part of the process, especially as I said earlier, it's entombed in the gospel
Yeah.
that out of death comes life, and then we take those opportunities and we just bury them. We
Yeah.
don't allow people to grieve, to express in mourning. We don't allow that opportunity to come alongside.
Right.
And we only tell the success stories where someone got better and didn't die, instead of saying, this life honored God through the illness, through the
Yeah.
struggle, through the death, and God still gives hope. He still answers
Yeah.
prayer, and He still is a good God
He still healed him.
giving us purpose.
We prayed for healing.
He has healing.
And Roger was still healed.
Yes.
Just not the way we thought it would happen or
And-
hoped for it to happen.
And one
right?
day, if we know Jesus,
Yeah.
we get to go to where Jesus is,
Yes.
and Roger will be there waiting because he trusted the Lord.
Exactly.
And so you have that opportunity of seeing the full culmination of your prayers for his healing
Yeah.
when you get to glory.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, which is a beautiful thing.
That'll be a great day.
Yeah, it will be.
I really appreciate you sharing your story. It's hard to do, but it's precious, and it's something that people need to know, and thank you.
It's a lot that we could talk about on Grief Beyond all of this,
There-
because
There's so
it's
much,
far more
right?
than detailed than what I had ever
Yeah.
imagined, but living it now is different, so
And,
it's,
and you learn as you go
Yeah.
how that opens up into so many
Yes.
other areas.
yeah.
And so, yeah, it's a
Yeah.
good thing for people to discuss in a healthy way.
And we're all going to experience it.
We're all
in
going to go
time
through
at
it.
different levels. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
All
Yeah.
right.
Thanks, Dave.
Awesome.
Okay.